Welcome. Today we're going to talk about a poor man's patent that I have, and I encourage you to steal it. I'll warn you that it may get gobbled up. The original work was done as a subcontractor to a contractor to Google, so arguably Google owns it, or even a contractor of Google, but that doesn't matter. It's a fundamental, imagine if Elon decided, I'm going to patent the idea of an electric car. No one else can make an electric car. There'll be tariffs of 200% on anything. I'm the only one who can make an electric car. Well, that won't fly, right? Like, we understand now there are certain things that are what is the word for it? A universal truth, or self-evident, or you can't patent sunlight, okay? Sunlight just comes down. You can try, but it won't work. So this is that kind of idea, and it's to tie it up for those who don't want to listen, it's asynchronous load synchronization, mains, right? Just imagine you've got 50 amps available and you've got 5 50 amp loads. Well, power goes out, power comes back on, they all try to start at the same time, and anyone from HVAC or any kind of heavy industry will tell you, you got a problem, right? Like, if those were air compressors and 5 50 amp air compressors all try to turn on at the exact same time, well, if they're old, well, you'll actually get into problems, right? Like, they can burn themselves up in retries. So you'll find that modern appliances have a soft start circuit and built-in hysteresis. If it tries to start, what will happen is there'll be a data race, and they'll have different timeouts for when, basically it will try to start, say, 3 times in a row, and if it can't, it will say, I'm not trying again for 30 seconds. I'm not trying again for 4 minutes. All right, so first we're going on the assumption that all things have a soft start circuit, and they are self-contained. If there is some piece of equipment that is old and rude and just a fucking contactor to mains onto an induction motor, that has to be outfitted with a soft start circuit. They're expensive, but you can buy them pulled down and used. So know that. Now, what's missing from those is there's nothing guaranteeing the timing between all these different devices. It's very easy. It's very easy. I've done it. I've shipped it. I mean, I've got pictures, and I don't have the original hardware anymore, but you have some current clamps and you have some big SSRs. Okay, it's simple. If you know what I'm talking about, like switching power, it ain't a big deal to turn 240 30 amps or 240 50 amps on and off, on and off, on and off, especially with next assembly having a soft start circuit. All you do is you have some firmware running, and that has to have a point where you can manage things, and you have to I'm jumping ahead here. I got distracted because we're running this simulated emergency, and fucking I always take those real serious, and threw me sideways. That's why I said I had a speech prepared, but it's garbled. So just let me fucking deep dive it for you real quick. The keystone to the system is that you must maintain a record of all things that happened so that you can audit it later. All right? This doesn't mean it's BLEing some information to a smartphone and it only records data when the phone's on. Shit like that won't fly. There's BMSs in the market like that. One of mine got wet and blew up the other day. You might have seen that video. That's not what I'm talking about. Fundamentally, and you can duplicate this, it's all open source. You have an Arduino. It has a real-time clock. It has a battery. It has a micro SD card, which takes SPI. That system cannot be on unless that Arduino is running. And there's a little interlock in there to make sure. If the Arduino isn't running, the system is down. It's a fail-off setup. You got to understand your fail modes. If you don't understand failure modes, you're done. It's a fail-off system. If you want to talk about redundant, stay hot systems, that goes on top of this. So the system cannot run without the Arduino, and you can do an STM32 if you want, but I use Arduino running. If the Arduino is running, it is writing data to the micro SD card. The data is plain text ASCII 2, and I prefer tab delimited because you can just open it up. But if you want, go ahead and make yours common delimited. It doesn't really matter. Do the quick math on how many years you can run on a 32 gigabyte micro SD, okay? It works out to like 2,000 years or 5,000 years, okay? So this is called a lifetime data log. If the micro SD is not in the system will not run. You have to write these code hooks. So the micro SD must be there. You must be doing successful writes to micro SD in order for the system to operate. That's the first fundamental understanding. So you will be able to go back and graph what happened. So what's happening? Well, we have 5 loads. They are asynchronous loads. Examples of an asynchronous load? Well, an air compressor. You never know when that fucker is going to turn on. Maybe never, maybe full time. A hot water bath. Very asynchronous. Dependent on what's going on around it. Not predictable. The most important one, a cooling system. Refrigerator, freezer, system cooling, totally asynchronous. All of these things run on a schedule, but they are all averaged out through thermal mass and other principles. The exact time that something comes on and how long it stays on for is negotiable. You have to have, if you have a system that has to remain a certain, it must remain at least this cool, or it must remain at least this hot, or it must maintain at least this much pressure, you have to have little IoT modules there. Now stop. I'm not selling anything. I'm not selling you $3,000 modules. Parts, $20. You might get irritated with BLE. It's fine. You can use CAN. You can use RS-45. You can use Ethernet. You can hardwire. Fine with me. It just means you have to fucking put wires in the walls and on the roof. I don't care. You can use Wi-Fi. Just think about your uptime and your interdependencies. So any mission critical, and this is really common, right? Like everyone around me who runs a process, well, they have controls in place. And when they want to hook up 5 50 amp units, well, they need that much overhead. What's 5 times 50 amps? 50, 100, 150, 200, 250 amps. That's a lot. Well, I make the claim that you don't need a 250 amp drop. You need a 50 amp drop. Run it right off of a fucking generator. You have to synchronize your asynchronous loads. Yeah. A man can do this by just standing there, flipping switches or plugging things in and out. It's very easy to prove. You have to, if you want to automate it and let go, you have to have IoT devices at the points to report whatever the metric is. If it's a refrigerator that has to have a cold chain, you need that data recorded. If it's an air compressor that has to maintain a certain pressure, you got to have that recorded in a reliable way. Not for real-time monitoring, although we offer that. In order to go back and prove that you held the line, because we don't need to hear about any fucking speculation. And by the way, this is not safe for work. You're in the underground here. Welcome. Okay. Synchronize asynchronous loads in order to lower your overhead calculation of what you need. I've executed this on 120 volts, where we only had a NEMA 5-15 outlet to work from, and we had 5 heavy loads to run, each requiring a home run dedicated circuit. But in the time domain, they only had a duty cycle of about 20%. So what you have to do is turn the first load on and let it reach its equilibrium. Turn the second load on, let it reach its equilibrium. and then maybe back to the first load, let it reach its equilibrium. Oh, now the third load has a request. Huh? That means that you're not just letting things turn on whenever the hell they want to. You're detecting, and you're turning them on and off. It is centralized. It comes from one point. It can be changed. You can schedule it, and you can see how it's running with a very simple graph in LabVIEW. Oh, look. Just like the dials in your car, all the dials are pointed out. And how has it been for the last 24 hours, 5 days, week, month, months, quarters, years? Huh? I can guarantee that your uptime was this, or that, and I can guarantee that you will know if you're down a system, because this is a fail-fast setup. First thing, you always have to have a way to bypass it, so that your engineer or your person who doesn't want to understand this can just flip a fucking switch and go old school. Like when I install solar water pump setups, I connectorize everything. So if the solar has some kind of problem, you can just unplug it and plug it right into mains. Okay? You have a bypass. So keep that in the back of your mind. That's an engineering effort. And the things I'm going to talk about step on a lot of toes of people who will say, no, you can't do that. Okay? Dogma. Because by God, that's the way they were taught. You know, they were taught to mix grout with a stick by hand, like you're folding batter. And there's only one way to mix the grout and only one way to apply the grout. And you will do it this way, and that is the only way to do it. Well, I appreciate that from the trades, but engineers who work the trades know that the boundaries and limits are there for particular reasons, usually fire, safety, equipment protection, regulation, rules, codes. I'm aware of that. You become aware of it when you build a bunch of things. So stow that away in your mind for a minute. That came up because I have a mentor who has a long list of patents. And there's two reasons to hold a patent, maybe three. One is to be a patent troll and to hold on to an idea and not let anyone else use it unless they pay you. He doesn't do that. I hold no patents. The only patents I hold are like classified patents. You'll never see them. They'll never be monetized. It doesn't matter. The second reason to hold a patent is to make sure that no one else can patent troll the idea. That's the most honorable reason to hold a patent. And then you can say, yeah, you can use that. That's fucking honorable. Third reason to hold a patent, pride, just to look good. I mean, half my friends have over 20 patents on their resume, companies like that shit. So hold that in your mind for a second while I speak after being rattled by a simulated emergency, while I drive over a hill in a car with a bad front wheel, and I'll eat my breakfast. I'm on super low blood sugar right now. Changing topics. You're at your house. You're into alternative energy. You know that some people have an auxiliary generator outside that just magically turns on when the power goes out. It's pretty cool. 20 kW. You know that if you ask them, they'll complain that it consumes a lot of propane because it's a gigantic generator. You know that some people have a solar system. It makes their energy bills go to zero. But when the power goes out, they don't have any power. All right? If you don't know those two things, stop watching and go meet some people. There's 3 ways to power your house. Around here, it's Pacific Gas and Electric Company, who I had a good exchange with the other day. It's solar, usually grid tie, or it's backup generator. Now, you could throw in there off-grid solar, but that's into a whole different realm. Let's not get sidetracked with that. let's first talk about the problem with the way code is written and how that impacts reality. Let's say you have a whole house with a 200 amp drop, 100 amp drop, whatever. There's like sizing requirements for the generator you need to back that house up. And at the end of the day, you end up with like a 22 kW monster generator, right? And just to have it running, it's just gulping propane. So if you just want to turn your generator on, you know, like I said, the power goes out, or let's say you want to be off the grid, pause. It's okay to want to be off the grid. You don't have to pay 35 cents a kilowatt. Let's say the power went out though, and you've got your whole house on LED lights, and you just want to charge your tablet, charge your phone, maybe play the TV. You're drawing like 300 watts. It is staggeringly inefficient to run a 22 kilowatt generator for like a 300 watt load. All right, it's stupid. So first off, anyone who is sophisticated has at least 2 generators. They have their small efficient generator that they can just grab, hand carry. Honda EU 2200i, Honda EU 2000, any of the clones. You grab it, you turn it to on, you open the vent, you set the choke, you pull the cord, it starts running, you turn the choke off, you plug into it, it's in eco mode. You run the extension cord through the fucking window, through a crack in the door, you throw a power strip on there, 2,000 watts, immediately available. You want to run a few extension cords all over your house, you got whatever you need. Now, if you're a grid pirate, one step further, you have what's called suicide cables. Not one, but 2. A suicide cable has prongs on either end. It will electrocute you. It will fucking start fires. It is safe if you know how to use it. There's better ways to do it than a suicide cable. But know this. If you want to back energize one leg of your house, the other leg of your house, or both legs of your house, you can do this with a Honda EU 2000 or a Honda EU 2200. Step 1, you have to have a main breaker to PG&E. It might be out by the box, or it might be out by the drop, it might be in your box. You have to throw that main breaker, and for your setup to be non-pirate, it has to have an interlock, such that it is impossible for you to do what I'm about to explain without that breaker being thrown. So the pirate way to do it is by throwing a breaker and plugging in suicide cables. The legitimate way to do it is you put an interlock in that says power is coming either from PG&E or from my alternative energy source. Okay, that's as simple as a giant switch. They're $50. You put the switch up, you're on PG&E. You pull it down, there's a 3-inch gap. You pull it down again, now you're hooked up to your alternative energy source. And that can be a 120 volt generator. You can run your 240 house on a 120 volt generator. If you want to be safe, go into your breaker box, below open any double breaker. That will disconnect your stove, that will disconnect your dryer, that'll disconnect your EV charger, that'll disconnect your hot tub, that'll disconnect sub panels. If you just want to be stupid about it. Now you have nothing but 120 volt circuits. If you plug a suicide cable, that's a cable with prongs on both ends, one into the generator and one into any fucking outlet of the house, you will back energize the entire branch L1 or the entire branch L2. It works, don't argue. You will not be able to back energize more than that branch is rated for. You are not worried because your energy source can't put out more than like 14 amps. So you might want to use an EU2000 because there is one single failure mode. That's where you back energize a random plug on the wall, and then you jump over to the next plug, which just has like a 14 AWG jumper between them, and you start drawing too much load in excess of 14 AWG. So it is preferred for this thought exercise that you plug into a 20 amp circuit. That's a 12 AWG circuit. That's 12 AWG between the outlets and all the way back to home. And you're not going to be able to produce more than 16 amps with either generator, so it doesn't matter. So you're breakered at the source, and you're breakered where you meet the breaker box, and then you fan out to all your other breakers. Okay, I think most people who are paying attention to me know that you can power L1 or L2 by plugging into any 20 amp outlet in your house with a hand carry generator. All right, are you aware that you can power both? You just grab another fucking suicide cable and plug it into another outlet. Now it has to be, they have to be opposing outlets. You have to understand your AC, right? AC isn't really 180 degrees out of phase, it's 120 degrees out of phase, but you have L1 and you have L2. And it's very easy to figure out which is which, and you can even mark your outlets with what branch they're on. If you plug one cable into a branch that touches L1 and one cable into a branch that touches L2, and then you plug both of those into your generator, what you'll find is that every single 120 volt appliance, outlet, wall switch, and ceiling light in your house will be energized with 120 volts. The 240 volt appliances will be in phase instead of out of phase, so they will not work. I have tested it. It doesn't harm them. You can just leave those breakers on, but for this exercise, turn them off. So that means you will not have an electric stove. You will not have an electric dryer. You will not have an electric EV. These are 240 volt loads, and we are back energizing a 240 volt split system with 120 volts by putting 120 volts on each side in phase. Yeah, of course, if you turn too much shit on like 9 wall heaters, it's just going to either blow breakers or shut down the generator. Okay? You need to understand what the primary failure mode is. Overheating your wires. So what's the requirement? No wire shall get hotter than 60 degrees C. So if you can't figure out how to make no wire go hotter than 60 degrees C, then you shouldn't be playing with suicide cables. This is an engineering channel. Leave. If you can't handle a hot plug-in, if you can't work hot, leave. Talking about emergency response. How do you, let's say that you got someone at your house who needs a fucking oxygen machine and the power's gone out, and it's a simple 120 volt box. Well, you can't just set the fucking gas burning generator right next to them. Yeah? Maybe you don't want to run extension cords all over the fucking house. You just got to get ready for it and know how to back energize something. Okay, that was a sidebar. You get energy from 3 things: PG&E, solar, and a generator. You're not going to want to run a 20,000 watt generator to just charge your kid's tablet. So you're going to have 2 generators. All of this needs to come together in a way that guarantees 2 primary things. Let's call it 3. 1, thou shalt never back energize Pacific Gas and Electric without explicit permission. That means never, ever, ever. I know the guys who climb on the poles. I would never do that. I never have. Thou shalt never heat up any electrical conductor in the house hotter than 60 degrees Celsius. It's not because it's going to burst into flames immediately. You can run it at 70 degrees, 80 degrees, 90 degrees, 100 degrees, 110 degrees, 120 degrees Celsius. It won't burst into flames. You know what will happen? You will embrittle the insulators, and you will create latent failures and unsafe situations in the future. This is an engineering channel. If you can't accept that you are responsible for maintaining safe and sane temperatures on the wires you're working on, then you are not qualified for this activity. You need to go understand PVC insulators, temperature ratings of wire, ampacity tables. If these aren't things that you're using on a daily basis, you need to get the fuck off my channel. Ampacity table. What's in an ampacity table? Your 60-degree chart, like your 70-degree, your 105C, right? Don't run wires hot. Just don't ever run any wire hotter than 60 degrees C, and you can use any UL rated wire on the market. Any wire that's on the big rack or on the shelf at Home Depot, they will all tolerate 60 degrees C. Romex, THHN, THWN, doesn't matter. You are safe if you do your load calcs to always tolerate at least 60 degrees C. Now, be careful if you're using any Chinese equipment. Chinese equipment is good, but some of it is counterfeit. The CE stamp means China export. There is no UL stamp. This shit will let you get in trouble. Like, I bought a piece of equipment the other day that has a NEMA 5-15 plug on it, and it draws 30 amps plus at 120 volts. That's an abuse of the handshake. We have a handshake that says, thou shall behave in this way if you're part of the NEMA electrical code, right? Well, that system assumes that you'll keep the duty cycle down low enough that your thermal breaker back at the buck get it. So, beware. Now, you say, well, what the fuck is this guy talking about? I already only understand half the words he's saying, and I think he's hallucinating, right? He's just babbling. Oh, I'm just babbling. For the third time, I'm gonna bring up a man who did not understand what I was talking about accused me of blathering the other day. That's a mistake. Do not ever accuse someone else of blathering when you don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You will shut the fuck up. I'm mad. I never forget. You need a place for all these things to come together that is safe and sane, with interlocks, with safeties, with no pirate business. Now, you get to where I'm at by doing pirate business. You're gonna plug in suicide cables and you're gonna fucking electrocute your hand. You're gonna run extension cords into extension cords into extension cords out in the wet and the muck, and you're gonna blow GFC eye sockets. You're gonna be popping breakers. You're gonna be dropping fucking, you're gonna be learning. Alright? You're gonna be ripping arcs. You're gonna be smoking boxes. There's a lot that comes up to this. You can't just, some young engineers can, but I recommend you come up in the old way. By starting small and simple, making your mistakes. Go start making your mistakes with little RC batteries. You understand when I'm talking about hooking up major hybrid grid tie systems, I've been working with lithium before lithium existed. Do you know how many lithium batteries I have owned and abused through their entire life cycle? Hundreds and hundreds. All different shapes and sizes. 1S, 2S, 3S, 4S, 6S, 8S, 16S, 12S, 24S, and 50 milliamp hour, 100 milliamp hour, an amp hour, 5 amp hours, 10 amp hours, 13 amp hours, 50 amp hours, 100 amp hours, 200 amp hours, 2000 amp hours. BMSs designed them. So understand, you can't just fucking jump into this and think it's just gonna work for you. We're getting close to that point now. You can just go out and buy Li-Time or Amp-Time batteries, 12 volt form factor. 12 volt, 100 amp hour is the best value. It looks just like a standard car battery, but it has screw terminals on top. It weighs far less. It has far more capacity. It has a flat discharge curve. It is completely and totally BMS protected. It is not freeze safe. Don't put them in a frozen spot. They need to be in a warm spot. You can run a golf cart with them. They do perform as described. They have been torn down online. They are fucking pedigree parts, dude. They are boss. So let's pause. Let's say you are running a security simulation and you showed the power went down. Well, all things that are important usually have an UPS, UPS, uninterruptible power supply. We just totally changed subjects for a second. And UPS has a pack of lead acid batteries inside. Very heavy, very low capacity, fucking garbage, dude. Okay, especially if they've been allowed to run flat at any given time. They have like 20% of whatever they fucking promise. They're garbage, okay? Those almost always have a main disconnect on them. There's no cell level monitoring. It's just fuck 12 volt batteries in parallel hooked up to a giant 120 amp Anderson connector. Unplug those and go recycle them. You go on Amazon, you search for ampere time 12 volt 100A. You will find Li time, which bought amp time. You will see batteries with screw terminals on top. They are like $270 shipped right now. As cheap as $255 shipped. I paid $420 shipped. Mine have been wired 4S in series, 48 volts in a golf cart in the fucking mud, getting hammered for over a year now. Those are Boss. You buy 2, 3, 4, 5 of those. And you buy a jumper kit, which is appropriate. Pre-terminated heavy gauge cables. Well, 100 amp hour batteries, those are ready to push a lot of current. 100 amps continuous each, like 280 amp burst, right? So look at your load, look at what's going on. Your load will say the most it will draw off the batteries. Otherwise you can infer it from the cable hooked up to the Anderson connector. Let's say it's 6 AWG, 50 amps. Let's say it's 2 AWG, 100 amps. So make sure that you wire accordingly. Parallel those batteries, hook them up, and you'll have a backup system that can run fucking days. So that's how you create your own backup system for pennies on the dollar. If you go out and spec an up system that'll last like a day, they're gonna be like, sure, start with a fucking gigantic rack, and then here's all these rack mount modules, and then all these expensive interconnects for them, and all this fucking shit. It's all lead acid garbage. Or they'll try to upsell you to the Life EPO4 and be like $2,000. It'll be like $246. It'll be like a $15,000 setup. I'll set you up with a 24-hour power source for your fucking rack that is so dead simple and 10 cents on the dollar, maybe 3 cents on the dollar. Simple. Resume. As you can see, I'm stopped here. You've got a house. There's 3 primary sources of power. Solar generator, which can be your hand carry or your big daddy. I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 generators. How do you wire that up? Mains comes from the wires. There's some up there. Don't just go grabbing those. Those don't belong to you. Those belong to the utility company. They might be at 20,000 volts. You'll learn to read the electrical wires and see where the transformers are. And you can actually do your own math based on how big that transformer is. And if you got zoom on your camera, you can actually read the numbers off of it and figure out what it's rated for and how many neighbors are hanging off of it. And you can figure out if there's any overhead left for you. You will be getting power after the transformer. That's nothing but a giant coil of wire, a transformer, in a can of oil for burning off heat, and then some really shitty wires that are super fucking thick insulation and super roached, dude, flying through the air to your house, where you'll see a little drip loop. You'll see L1, L2, neutral, no ground. The exposed wire is aluminum. That's your neutral. That's your difference. There'll be one steel strand in there. You'll see that strain relieving in some cases. In other cases, there'll be a dedicated strain relief cable. Every fucking county, every fucking place is different, dude. I look at the power systems everywhere. Some are underground, some are in the air. Go to San Diego. Jesus Christ, dude. Utility will come in, throw a piece of conduit, and hit your meter. Never fuck around. You don't touch anything on the other side of the meter. Coming off of your meter, the first thing that you want to have professionally installed, transfer switch. First, put a breaker on there, 100 amps or 200 amps. It can be one of those pull-out fuses, whatever. Just show that you will never draw from or push back on your utility more than that rated value. Of course, it'll be two. It's like two fuses, or it's a double breaker. That's the agreement you will make. You are going to put breakers and fuses everywhere. These are what you depend on. This is what allows you to get past the old loading rules. Dude, it's not a one-way path. Power isn't generated at the utility and consumed at your house as a consumer. Power doesn't come from the utility into your EV where it gets consumed. That's a consumer capitalist bullshit paradigm of money grubbing buttholes. It's a two-way street. Every electrical panel, every electrical wire in your house is a fucking two-way street. There are no diodes in there. There is nothing in there that's directional other than some breakers. So everybody has to play nice. First off, you convert your house to international standard. This means everything can accept 120 volts or 240 volts at 50 hertz or 60 hertz. For the big appliances, you can get some. They won't work at 120 volts, but that are 50 or 60 hertz compatible. Inverter-driven things don't care about 60 hertz versus 50 hertz. Remember that. That's a sidebar. Seek out things which can tolerate 50 or 60 hertz. Things that can't, those would be electric motors that tie directly to the AC and assume 60 cycles per second. That's something that's going to come into play in a little while here. Now, the utility has come down into some conduit through their own meter. Don't fuck with their stuff. It pops out of that meter. You have a box professionally installed that has 100 amp or 200 amp fuses or breaker at the fucking utility and a big switch or an interlock. The goal is to be able to disconnect from utility, and I prefer that be automated, and switch off to your own microgrid. So Generac sells one of these boxes. There are many. It attaches directly to mains, and it's nothing but a switch. In the middle, El No Connecto. You're in the middle. You push it up, it connects you to PG&E. You push it down, it connects you to your alternative energy source. Install that first, trust me, because we're going to go in a lot of directions where sometimes you're going to want to get completely off the grid in order for you to do some experimentation and simulation and test, stuff like that. Now, the problem with starting out with a switch like that is it impedes grid tie. All right, so we're going to set some boundaries and limits there. Assume 12,500 watts. Call it 10 kW. Nothing you're going to do is going to exceed 10,000 watts. Start there and you'll win. Nothing you're going to do is going to exceed 10,000 watts. Not your generator, not your solar. Here's why. That part tags right into your box as it stands while you're on the PG&E side. You don't want more than a 10,000 watt generator. It's got too much standby draw. You're not going to fit more than 10,000 watts of solar, dude. You don't need it. Do the math. 10,000 watts of solar, let's say it actually produces 10,000 watts. 6 hours a day, that's 60 kW a day. 10 days, that's 600 kW times 3. What's 600 times 3? 1.8 megawatts? Is that fucking right? Do the math again. 10,000 times 6 is 60 kW. Times 10 is 600 kW. times 2 is 1200 kW, plus 600 kW is 1800 kW. That's 1.8 megawatt hours a month. If you're using more than that, get off my channel. It's a reasonable limit. It's NEMA 1450. It's California locker. It's 6 AWG. Just like as you go through the gauges, up through the gauges, 10 AWG is a natural limit. As soon as you go to 8 AWG, things get funny, right? So, you know, like Romex, you do 12 and 14 gauge. Now, you can get 10 gauge Romex, but it starts to get all expensive, and it's not hard to eat. It's like, it's all fucked up, right? Natural limits. There's a natural limit right around 6 AWG. You can get some real nice SOOW. You can get a lot. There's a lot of it, dude. Keep it at 50 amps, 6 AWG, 12.5 kW. Make sure that your solar, like, just assume for now your solar is not going to produce more than 10 kW. Let's assume your generator is not going to produce more than 10 kW. Now you got two generators, right? You got your big generator and you got your little generator. So first, we'll go with the standard setup. You have the utility wires coming from the sky. They go through your meter. They go into your 2 fuses or your double breaker, which guarantees you will never draw more than or push more back than the agreement with PG&E. You hang your Generac box, which may have those things included. It has automatic sensing. If PG&E is there, it passes that along. And your house just runs as normal. If PG&E takes a shit, it switches over and it starts your generator automatically, and it connects your house to the generator. This is why you don't want like a 22 kW generator. That thing will fire up while you're at work, and all day long, while your house is drawing 300 watts, which you can just look at the meter and see what you're drawing, you'll be burning fucking gallons of propane. So, whatever they tell you, don't install one that big. You don't need one that big. Don't install one any bigger than 10 kW. And there's a ton of 7.5 to 10 kW generators that are capable of integrating with auto start and running off of natural gas or propane or gasoline. And there's also diesel generators. And there's also solar generators. So get your house set up, even if you're not going to use it, to automatically switch off and keep your grid up all the time. That's one system. Now the other system. Let's assume all that's in place, that's running. You're over here at your main breaker box. There are little round holes all over the place. Those are called knockouts. They come in 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch. There's 1 1/4 inch conduit, and there's 1 1/2 inch conduit, 2 inch conduit, 2 1/2 inch conduit, 3 inch conduit, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4, 5, 6, 8 inch conduit. Don't use 1/2 inch conduit. Don't use 3/4 inch conduit. Use conduit in 1 inch or 2 inch. You know, use whatever's around. I use 2 inch conduit. When you look at those knockouts, oftentimes there's different sizes. Well, if you mess up and you knock it out too big, get bigger conduit. Or you can get these little adapter plates that'll patch, you know, like a 2 inch conduit hole down to a 1 1/4. I use 2 inch conduit. If you go any bigger than 2 inch conduit, you're going to start to find that you can't really plug it directly into the boxes. And if you get into some of the smaller boxes, you'll find that it can't land your 2 inch conduit. What I do is I look at my box and I look at the biggest fucking hole, and I choose a conduit size which will mate to that. At times when I'm doing engineering, I get my knockout kit. This is a hydraulic press. It has a pecker. You knock out a 1/2 inch knockout, drop the pecker in the hole. You screw on a cutter, and then you go and it goes clunk, and it knocks out for you a 2 inch hole, a 1 1/2 inch hole, a 1 1/4 inch hole, a 1 inch hole, whatever size hole you want. You can make whatever knockouts you want in a box. Knock your box out to 2 inch. use PVC conduit. Don't use metal conduit, dude. We've got to get away from metal conduit. Use PVC conduit. You have a threaded adapter. It's a male pipe thread, and then you use a standard nut, and then you screw over that a little abrasion protection. I forgot that in my last build. Run a burr whip and put a chamfer on all rough edges. Go 2-inch straight down. Either straight into the attic if you're in a slab, or straight into the floor if you're elevated. Right out of the fucking house, 2 inches. Into the attic, which is nice if you got one. Into the floor, which is not nice, but it will work. Turn 90 degrees. You do that with a big swoop. Stay clear of the joists. Do not fucking drill through any joists. Stay clear of the joists, but be ready to hang. You hang with plumber's tape. You wrap the plumber's tape. It looks like a roll of tape, but it's steel and it has holes. And so the first part is you put it up there, and you can just fucking hammer a nail or run a screw and attach it to the runners under your house. And you come down and you wrap it around your pipe, and then you affix it with a nut and a bolt, with some fucking wire wrap, with a crimp. By wrapping on itself, it doesn't really fucking matter. You're gonna suspend your pipes. I prefer to have the pipes run right at the wood line, so I can grab them like that. But arguably, it makes sense to have your pipes down a few inches in fucking open air, dude, so that if you do have some kind of insane flame out, it's not right on the kindling under your house. I don't really care what you do. Turn 90 degrees and head to the closest wall. Get out of the fucking house. Outside. You're gonna punch through. You're gonna use a putty around the hole that you cut with a hole saw. I have like 25 hole saws. Why do you think I have so many hole saws? Pick a hole saw that is bigger around. The ID of your hole saw, no, the OD. The OD of your hole saw has to be bigger than anything you're gonna slide through it. Assume it's gonna be a coupling, though it could just be the diameter of the pipe. A tight fit is nice. If you have to cut a hole with a jigsaw that's all fucked up, that's fine. You run your pipe through it. Now, what you do is you go get a piece of wood, good wood, all right? You draw a circle on it that is the exact diameter of the pipe coming through. You cut that circle out with a hole saw, with a jigsaw, whatever. Now cut that piece of wood in half, and now you have a clamshell. Put that clamshell around your pipe and fucking screw it in. And put some fucking goobers behind it, dude. Either an adhesive sealant, a silicone adhesive, or a caulking, or a putty, or a foam pad. I don't care. Plug your fucking holes if you make holes. You understand what I just described to you? How to make a after the fact rough hole hider? Because sometimes you gotta fucking drill holes, whatever you got. The 2-inch pipe comes down out of the box, and it punches through the floor, up through the ceiling. It turns right. It goes out through a wall. Don't breach the ingress agreement at the walls. Oh, you're outside. Turn up if you're down low. Turn down if you're up high. And plug into the outdoor box. Pick the cheapest one that's big. They all have an inlet in the top and the bottom. You can come in on the side. You can do anything you want. Try not to fill your pipes full of water. Pipes always fill full of water. Your outdoor box may have something like 6 dedicated breaker slots, where you could put 12 doubles. You could put 12 circuits in the form of doubles. A double is, look at this guy in the white Tesla, dude, just yanking his car back and forth, let's get this guy on camera. He's swerving left and right, left and right, left and right, like he's trying to pass those people. Let's see if he acts like a douchebag. Yeah, here he goes, cutting in front of that guy. There's a few. It's the Tesla Millie 5000. Do we have? All right. You have a 2-inch conduit. It's running down from your main panel in the house or up, it comes outside, and now you've got your outside box. The cheap one right now has 6 slots. That's gonna be really limiting. If you put doubles in there, you can do 3 big circuits. You can do a 50 amp, a 50 amp, and a 50 amp. Now by regular load calculations, right? That'll get you in trouble. Your sub panel out there is a joining point where your solar can come in and your hand carry generator can come in, and you need to interlock it to your PG&E. So we're not gonna have time to finish this. That's all right. Well, we'll just rattle off some regular data. Anytime you're gonna pull a sub panel, just do it in 6 AWG. Make it 50 amps. Anytime you're gonna pull a main panel, just do it in 2 AWG. Make it 100 amps. If you're going bigger than that, you're getting more serious than we're talking about. 2 white Teslas in front of us. Maybe they'll race. It should be fun. Where everybody's really bad about merging. Yes, you can run boxes side by side by side. I've gone into factories and seen 15 outdoor breaker boxes side by side by side by side by side. Yes, you can buy bigger outdoor boxes. Effectively, their main panels, what they have that you want is a main breaker. Any sub panel comes off of a breaker in your main breaker box, and it doesn't hurt to have another breaker out there at the panel, especially if you're going to do grid pirate shit like back energizing with a hand carry generator. You may consider the implications of setting up your base of operations someplace other than where your main transfer switch is. You will find SARA down any path where you start installing your solar and your auxiliary generators, other than where your utility and your transfer switch are. You are going to want the ability to control the transfer switch. If you're located on the opposite side of the house, then you may consider running some wires for the transfer switch and an interlock such that you can remotely throw the transfer switch and open yourself to mains. You don't want to be close to mains, you want to be open to mains. All of these have hardwire connections, and all of them will fail safe if wired correctly. Step 1, go off grid. Install a set of fuses and breakers, fuses or breakers, right to the utility, and a transfer switch. This can be a mechanical transfer switch while you're practicing, but later it needs to be an automatic listed transfer switch. This transfer switch will open anytime utility goes down, and it will put you in an off-grid configuration. If grid is up, then it will have you grid tied, and you can dump back into the grid if you have like a standard permitted solar setup that's grid tied. So going on the assumption that at some point in time you got steered wrong and you installed a permitted non-battery backed grid tie system that goes down in the event of a power outage, and you're wondering why the fuck you've got 10,000 watts of solar on your roof doing nothing through the middle of the day, and why your 20 kilowatt generator is gulping propane all through the middle of the day when you're at work, and you're wondering why you can't have a bank of 50 volt batteries, say 1,000 amp hours worth, stored right there, such that when the utility goes down, your solar then switches over, and all of the stored energy that's in your batteries that didn't go back up into the grid that you stored locally kick on and drive an inverter that back powers your house without back powering the grid, which at this point in time is open. You're wondering why you can't do that? Well, you can. Why wouldn't you be able to do that? Start out by going on Amazon, buy amp time 12 volt 100 amp hour batteries, or the 200 amp hours. I suggest keeping everything hand carry. They get very fucking heavy. You can configure those up to 4S to make 48 volts. You will need to use 16S LiFeU P04 48 volt technology to execute on this. 58 volts is the fully charged, full charge voltage. You discharge them down to like 42 volts, 49 volts, some people even 36 volts. You're not going to get any power after like 49 volts. So call it a 42 volt LVC absolute fucking minimum. Do not assume that you're ever going to drop below 42 volts, and you will never go above 58 volts, though you could see 59, 58.4, and some transients. Hook these batteries up in series parallel. It doesn't fucking matter. You can make a giant row of parallels and then put those in series. You can make series runs and then put those in parallel. It doesn't really matter to me. Each one of them is like, 100 amp hours times 13.2 volts. They're about 1,300 watt hours. You could round up, you could round down. You're not going to get everything out of them. Why don't you just be safe, round them down to a kilowatt hour each. So if you put 4 in series, there's 4 kilowatt hours. We'll call it 4,200 watt hours. Really, you could call it 5 kilowatt hours. Doesn't really matter. You want to use a round number? All right, 5 kilowatt hours for 4 of those wired in series. Now you start paralleling them. 5, 10, 15, 20. All of those need an inverter. I use Grow Watt 5000 ESs to make 5,000 watts. And you hook 2 in parallel, which I have not done yet, to make 10,000 watts. And of course you can make 15,000 watts. I'm just realizing I have to go to the bathroom really bad, and I probably won't be able to get into the building.